This is a tie rod end replacement on a 2004 Bombardier Can-Am Outlander 330. This is the two-wheel drive model. So we got the knuckle here. Here's your tie rod end. First thing we did was loosen this top bolt for the knuckle to the shock and move this bracket out of the way so we could get to the nut down here. Once we got that loosened, we took off the black shroud there for the radiator. It had 1, 2, and then 3 of the little plastic clips, and then it pops right out. Just makes it easier to get into the inner tie rod there. Once we had that out, went ahead and unscrewed the castle nut. First you take out the cotter pin, you just bend it straight and then gently beat it out with a hammer. And then the nut was an 18mm nut, and once we had it unscrewed there was a washer on each side of the knuckle, and then the rod just pulled right out. We're on the inside here, and it was the same way. Once we had the shroud out, there's a little bracket here with the radiator hose. I popped the radiator hose out of the bracket just to give you a little more room on top for the nut for the tie rod end. Once we had that moved out of the way, it was easy to get a 18mm socket and then a wrench on the bottom part and loosen it right up. It also had a washer on the top and the bottom of the metal for the steering stem there, and then it popped right out. The tie rod parts that we used, you can see here is All Balls Racing. The numbers are here that you can read, and you need 2 sets, one for one side and one for the other. They only come with 2, a left and a right, so you would need a total of 4, which is 2 sets. I believe they're about $34 a piece, so for 70 bucks you can replace your tie rod ends. Alright, so we got the tie rod here on the workbench. This is the outside or the left hand threaded tie rod. Just so that you don't try screwing it the wrong way, you got to remember that these are opposite. They're not righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. They're lefty-tighty, righty-loosey. So what we did was we counted the threads, measured in between, measured overall length so that we can try to get an idea of where it's going to be for putting it back on the quad, and then we'll adjust it slightly once we get it on the quad. So we went ahead and took off the old one here on the outside, screwed it back on, tightened the nut at the measured distance, and then we'll go ahead and do the other side. Alright, so we have both tie rod ends on the tie rod, and we have it installed back here on the quad. We went ahead and tightened down the 19mm nut there on both ends so that the tie rod is tight to the knuckle and tight to the steering stem, and we left the nuts here loose so that we can adjust this rod and pull the tire in or out depending on how it needs to go. Alright, so we got both new tie rod ends installed on the other side here. They're tightened down to the steering stem and to the knuckle. The rod here is still loose. The nuts here are still loose. What we're going to do is we're going to leave the shrouds off here so that you can get to the adjustment easier. And we're going to put the tires back on and drop it down to the ground, and then I'll show you how to adjust the in and out of the tie rod. Alright, so I'm sure there's plenty of different ways to adjust the tie rods and make sure that all 4 wheels are straight. One way that I'm going to try to go ahead and do this is, if you look at the tire, you can see that line there in the middle of the tire. So I measured the rear tires from this line on the right to the line on the left and got 93mm. So now I'm going to measure the front from that line to the other line and make sure that it's 93mm. And then I'm going to make the handlebars straight and then make sure that the tires are straight and lined up with the back tires on both sides, and make sure that it's not twisted out or in on both sides. So we have our handlebars straight up here at the top, and then down at the tire, if you measure from middle of this tire to the middle of this tire, we're actually at 94 millimeters, and the back measurement is 93 millimeters. And this tire here is just about straight, but needs to come out a little bit, and this one here is almost exactly straight. So we'll go ahead and adjust them just a little bit and then tighten up the nuts on the tie rod. Alright, so the way the adjustment works on the rod is there's a little slotted spot right here. As you turn that towards the front of the vehicle, it tightens the wheels so that if you were at 94 millimeters, you would come down to 93. The way that it works if you want to make them a little bit wider is you would turn this back towards the back of the vehicle, and that's for the same on both sides as you're looking at it. So back would be to widen it a little bit, forward would be to tighten it a little bit. Once you have them adjusted to where both tires look straight and are the same distance apart as the rear tires, you can go ahead and lock down these nuts, take the tires off, put your cotter pins back in, and then put your shrouds back on.